Hi everybody and welcome to day 6 of poetry writing. Today in our poetry writing we're going to be using the poems that we've written previously to review all of the stuff that we've learned this week. So if you're writing in a notebook or maybe you have several different pieces of paper that you're using or a Word document, I want you to take the time to pull those up so you can look at them and scroll through and really be able to easily access them throughout the lesson, or at least through the first part. So I want you to look through your notebook right now. I'm going to have you pause and just notice some similarities and differences amongst your poems. So you can go ahead and do that. And when you're done, we're going to have a pause and think. So we're going to pause and think 3 separate times here. So you might be having to pause and play as you go. What is an interesting sensory detail that you have written so far? So you can read that out loud if you're working with someone or if you just feel comfortable reading it out loud. Or you can get a colored pencil or a marker and you can circle or underline or put a bubble around it, anything that you want. An interesting sensory detail that you've written. You could also go find an interesting sensory detail in each of your poems if that's something that you're really excited about. Go ahead and pause while you do that. And now that you're back, I want you to consider the second question. What sounds have you intentionally included in your poem? Intentional means on purpose, so that you thoughtfully put in your poem. Read a couple words that have those sounds. Or underline, circle, right? If you used repetition with alliteration. Go ahead and underline or circle or share those sounds with someone while you pause. And now that we're back, what decisions have you made about what the poem looks like on the page? So that might be about stanzas, maybe you did a form where it looks like a shape, maybe you included short lines and long lines or different indentations. I want you to look through and really think about and appreciate the work that you've done on each of your poems that make them all look unique so far. So go ahead and pause here. And now that you've done that, we're going to move on to a new poem today. So this poem is called Crickets by Myra Cone Livingston. So I'm going to read it out loud and then I'm going to read it one time with you also, okay? So it starts at the top and we go left to right. They tell the time of night, they tick. The time of night, they tick, they tell. Of night, they tick and tell. The time, they tick, they tell, they time, they click. Okay, now we're going to read it together. I think this they down here is actually supposed to be the. So I am trying to erase the Y here, and it's not quite letting me. There we go. It's kind of erased now. So now let's read it together. 1, 2, 3. They tell the time of night, they tick. The time of night, they tick, they tell. Of night, they tick and tell. The time, they tick, they tell, they time, they click. Nice job. Thanks for reading that through with me. Now we're going to pause and think. There's going to be 3 separate pause and thinks on this slide again. So the first one is, what do you notice about this poem? I want you to pause for at least 30 to 60 seconds and really consider the things that you noticed. You can even rewind back and look at the slide again if you want to have it up on the screen. Something that I thought was really interesting is that it kind of sounds like crickets talking to each other back and forth. And I also liked that the 2 columns of words in the poem look like kind of like a cricket's antenna. So that might be different from what you observed, and that's totally fine. It doesn't mean your answer is wrong in any way. That's just what I decided to share from my noticings. My second question for you to pause and think about, or pause and ponder, is how does the way that the words are placed on the page help you understand what the poem is about? Go ahead and pause. This answer is kind of similar, at least for me, to the first question, because the things that I happened to notice were the form on the page, and that's totally fine if you did the same thing. But I kind of liked the back and forth of the poem, kind of like a conversation going back and forth. Or maybe you noticed the antenna could have looked like two antennas coming up, or really anything else. I wish I could hear. You guys always have such creative ideas. Lastly, what does the poem sound like? How does the poet create that sound? Go ahead and pause and consider that. Some of the possible ideas that you might have come up with here are that words like tick and talk are repeated, and the sounds, kind of like the sounds that crickets make. You might have also noticed that she repeats certain words over and over. Oops, I lost my spot in my notes. Bear with me. You could have also maybe noticed that it sounds a little bit like crickets chirping if you use your imagination going back and forth. The poet also repeats the sounds like t and k, tick and talk, right? And then she also repeats the word they. I noticed she repeats that a lot. Having some technical difficulties using PowerPoint. Still learning. Thanks for being flexible. So we're going to add to our notes about poems here. I'm going to go through super fast just to spark our memories. We've got sensory details, rhyming and not rhyming, short lines, poems about anything, personification, alliteration, short or long lines, stanzas, number of lines in stanzas, and now, yesterday we have a poem's shape, can help the reader know what it's about, and today we have poets may repeat words or phrases to create sound in poems. So they might use repetition, kind of that back and forth repeating itself. Or poems can include words that sound like what the poem is about. And that long word down here is onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia. So when we use onomatopoeia, we kind of try to make the words sound like maybe the critter or object or thing that we're talking about. We'll learn more about that today. Now we get to move on to our quick write already. If you were going to write a poem about an animal or thing that makes noise, what would you write about? I have some examples for you before you get started because it's kind of a broad question. So I was brainstorming thinking animals, things that make noise. Gosh, there's so many different things. There's big things, small things, things in your house, things outside. I was really excited by the animals at first because you all know that I've been pretty fascinated with snakes lately, and snakes make a fun noise. I also thought it would be fun to write it in the form of a snake. A barking dog, right, because I'm thinking of Nigel. Birds chirping. And then I started thinking of the fire alarm. Here at our new place, we have a really sensitive fire alarm. So for some reason, which is great because it keeps us safe, but when we're cooking, literally just the steam of the boiling water is enough to set it off. I don't know why it's so sensitive. So that's a sound that's on my mind a lot lately. Maybe the sound of an ambulance passing by, or just the sound of the TV in the background. So for your quick write, I want you to pick one of these, not one of my lists, but you can make a list of your own and just kind of brainstorm, right? The first things that come to your mind, if it makes a sound, write it down, okay? 5 minutes. Go ahead and pause here, and we'll see you back after your timer's up. I hope that wasn't too bad. We're moving on to writing time now. So remember, 20 to 30 minutes, really trying to stay focused and zoned in on your writing. If you need to use your kitchen timer on the microwave, or if you need to use a device or a watch or anything like that, make sure that you're keeping track of your own time. You guys are totally capable of that in 4th and 5th grade. Okay? First thing you're going to write about. You're going to write a poem about an animal or another thing that makes noise. Try to include either repetition, onomatopoeia, or both. And remember, just in case, I honestly thought that there was a second poem on here as I was going through. It turns out there's not. But onomatopoeia, some more examples of that are like a machine noise. Honk, beep, beep, vroom, clang, clang, zap, boing, right? All onomatopoeia. If you're using animals, it could be, let's see. there's animal names like a cuckoo bird, or I'm looking right now, I pulled up some examples on my other screen. A whooping crane and chickadees are named after the sounds that they make, it seems. Or maybe like impact sounds, if you're used to writing comics, like boom, crash, whack, thump, bang, all of those things. It also might be sounds of your voice, like if someone shushes you, it's because that comes from shh, right? Shush. It's the sound that it makes. Also like growls and whines and whispers and hisses. Sounds like it sounds like its own name. So I want you to try to use onomatopoeia or repetition in your poem today, okay? Then if you complete that before the 20 to 30 minutes are up, you can choose one of these options. You can write a poem about another animal or thing that makes noise, write a poem about weather or feeling, you can do another object poem, or write a poem about anything that you choose. That is all I have for you today, and I hope you have a nice time writing. I hope that you'll share with me what you write and share with each other as well. Go bees!